Welcome, my mages, to Sageo Fables. I am your fabled sage, and I am bringing you a deck tech today thanks to my Twitter poll. The first place choice was the Essentials of Storm, but I promise I'm still working on that. That will be a video series to come, in which the goal is to be able to break down how to build a storm deck in Commander when we don't have the luxury of being able to play more than one copy of a card in our deck. So, I'm going to bring a breakdown into sort of the fundamentals of the parts that make a storm deck, and then go through how, like, an example storm deck in each of the in each monocolored, and highlighting some commanders that I think would make good contenders for a storm deck. And then taking those in the next video and looking at how to combine those to make 2, 3, 4, 5 color storm decks using those fundamentals. So it's still in the works, but in the meantime I wanted to bring you all a video still of my second place choice on the poll, which is Hofri Boros Girl Summer. So with Modern Horizons and Strixhaven and, you know, all of these sets that have come out recently, my partner builds a Baz from Modern Horizons because he is absolutely obsessed with modular. And he has a really cool modular Marchesa the Black Rose deck, which is really, really cool. I'll drop that deck list down in my show notes so you all can see. It's really neat. It's a really cool take on Marchesa. But so he's built Zabaz, and then I built Hofri. So there's been a lot of Boros happening in our household, much to my casual play group's chagrin. But I am super jazzed about this deck. It's really cool. I have always wanted to build an Aristocrats deck in EDH, but with, like, you know, most of the Aristocrats decks are red-black, Mardu, Orzhov, and I think with black, it just makes it so easy because you just have you have access to, like, automatically the best payoffs, like Viscera Seer. Now there's Bastion of Remembrance, you know, Vindictive Vampire, all of these things that whenever a creature dies, you know, your opponents lose life and you gain life, and it's just so easy to fall into these recursive loops that even if you're not looking to go infinite, like, may not actually go infinite, but they go a lot and they go enough to where your opponents are dead. And so I really wanted to build an Aristocrats deck that didn't have black. And then when Hofri came out, I was super excited to be able to do Boros, because I actually don't have a Boros deck right now. I built a Winota token deck online that I've gotten to play a few times, and that's been really fun. But Winota, oh man, Winota is so powerful and so cool. And so, yeah, so this is a really fun deck. It's definitely not high power. I think Hofri could be very easily tuned up to be a high power deck. I think I am certain there are combos that you can do with recurring creatures in this deck, and being able to, you know, Karmic Guide, for Christ's sake. There's definitely like an option for this deck, but it's definitely not what I'm trying to do. It's a little bit lower powered. It's, you know, it takes a little bit of setup. So it's really more of like a mid to late game kind of deck, and it's just really just jamming through on value, playing creatures with solid ETBs, playing things that want to go to your graveyard that give us some sort of benefit in order to keep a sort of Aristocrats train rolling. And so, yeah, with that, let's talk about what our commander actually does. Hofri is a 4/5, 4/3, a red and a white, a Dwarven Cleric. The first line of text is spirits you control get +1/+1 and have trample and haste. Super good. Like, I love spirits are one of my favorite creature types. I, for a long time, really, really wanted to build Bant spirits in Modern, but as I was just getting into Modern, paying $700 for a deck was just unfeasible. Which was really unfortunate because I love the spirit synergies, and so being able to have a little bit of those in this deck is very cool. There's definitely a light spirit tribal. It's not full on dedicated to that. But we do have like a little bit of, you know, value that we get off of, you know, our creatures being spirits. And the second line of text, which is what this deck is really built around, is whenever another non-token creature you control dies, exile it. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it is a spirit in addition to its other types. And it has, when this creature leaves the battlefield, return the exile card to your graveyard. So with Hofri out, whenever we have a non-token creature die, so it's going to go to the graveyard, and then Hofri says exile it. Once that happens, once it goes to exile, we get to make a token copy of it. And when that token leaves the battlefield, then our card that we exiled goes back to the graveyard. So there's some really cool lines in this deck that take advantage of the sort of going to the graveyard, going to exile, going back to the graveyard, and what we do with these tokens. Is really cool, and it's a really fun space to play in, and I think there are a lot of really cool different ways that you can take this. And so with that, let's look at what our creatures. The creatures are our main portion of our deck, and they're kind of broken down into 3 categories in this deck. There are creatures that want to die. There are creatures just with solid ETBs to give us some good value to help us make sure that we can keep up in the game or deal with threats on the board. And then there are payoffs for things dying or going to exile or going back to the graveyard. And so let's look first at our creatures that want to be sacked. So first we have Beskir Shieldmate, a human warrior, a 2/1 for 1 and a white. There we go. Sorry. I had to clear my throat, and I didn't want to do it on the mic. So, Beskir Shieldmate says, whenever it dies, create a 1/1 white human warrior creature token. So I love these cards that... so first of all, I love... Tokens are one of my favorite strategies, and have made a lot of token decks recently. I think tokens, aside for just my love for them, I think that it's really easy to build a very fair token deck in Commander, and so I think definitely when I see a powerful card, or a powerful commander, or a powerful color combination, my first impulse is well, let's make a token deck. That's easily dealt with. There are a lot of answers for token decks, but if you get to do the thing, you get you get to make a million tokens or make huge tokens, and you just get to wipe out the table with them. And so I like creatures that when they die, they leave bodies behind. I call them piñatas, because when you beat them open, more creatures come spilling out. So we have Beskir Shieldmate as one of those. Another one that I love is Doom Traveler for 1 white mana, a 1/1 human soldier, and when Doom Traveler dies, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token flying. So it's nice with our commander who cares about spirits. So when Doom Traveler dies, we'll get a spirit token of Doom Traveler, who will be a 2/2 with trample and haste, and the token that when it leaves behind will be a 2/2 flyer with trample and haste, which is really cool. It's a really great value, a solid 1-drop. A really nice way to sort of get that engine going. And with our bigger ones that we have, both 9 mana spells. One of them is Phyrexian Triniform, an artifact creature golem. And when Phyrexian Triniform dies, create 3/3/3 colorless golem artifact creature tokens. It is a 9/9, and it has Encore 12. So if we have Phyrexian Triniform in our graveyard and we pay 12 mana, for each of our opponents... so if we have 3 opponents, we're going to make 3 copies of Phyrexian Triniform and exile the Phyrexian Triniform from our graveyard. And then each of those token copies has to attack an opponent if able. It has haste, and at the beginning of the next end step, you sacrifice him. So this is super cool because we can, with Hofri out, if we sack our Phyrexian Triniform, we're going to get the 3/3/3 colorless golem creatures. And we're going to get another copy of Phyrexian Triniform that's a token. Our actual physical card is going to go to exile. We sack that token copy of Phyrexian Triniform. That's going to put our original card back into our graveyard so we can encore it. And now we've popped that one, so now we have 6 golems. And then if we have 12 mana, we can encore it and then end up and sack all of those and then end up with another 9. So we can get, with Hofri out, we can get 15 3/3s, which is silly. It's very silly. I love it. It makes me very happy. So it is very cool. Super cool card. I love from Commander Legends. I used to have it in Brutaclad, but 9 mana is a big ask. Did I take another? I don't remember. Yeah, super cool card. And then another 9 mana artifact creature, also a golem. A 9/9 with flying, vigilance, and trample. And when Triplicate Titan dies, create a 3/3 colorless artifact creature token with flying, a 3/3 with vigilance, and a 3/3 with trample. So very much, unfortunately, this doesn't have Encore. But this is still a very cool card, and we love to make token copies of this so that we can pop them and get more 3/3s with keywords. Yes, those are our bigger boys in the deck that will definitely put a significant amount of power onto the battlefield so that we can get through and smash our opponents for significant damage, but also take advantage of some of our payoffs that we'll talk about later. And another cool creature that we have with Encore is Impulsive Pilferer, 1 red mana for a 1/1 Goblin Pirate. When Impulsive Pilferer dies, create a treasure token, and it has Encore for 3 in a red. So super nice, be able to sack this, get a treasure, have it pay for itself. With Hofri out, we get a token copy of Impulsive Pilferer, that when it inevitably dies, we'll get another treasure. And yeah, very cool. Love it. Neat boy. And then we have some creatures that are able to sacrifice themselves to give us effect. One of them being Catalyst Elemental, 2 in a red for a 2/2 Elemental. It has Sacrifice Catalyst Elemental, add 2 red. So it's a really nice way to have cards that sacrifice themselves, either to give us an effect or with like evoke creatures. And because we don't need to have another piece on the battlefield in order to generate more value. So with Hofri out, this gives us, I mean, it's basically like a little bit worse of a Seething Song. Because we'll sacrifice this to itself, that'll trigger Hofri, we'll get a token copy of this that we can then sacrifice, so we'll get a total out of 4 mana, which for a 3 mana investment, so put us 1 ahead, which we can use, to ramp, to put out something, something cool, something bigger. And then being a 2/2 at 3 mana actually makes it really nice, because that works well with some of our recursion and sort of other value engines, like with Mentor the Meek, so that we can draw cards and all that good stuff. And then for some graveyard hate, which everyone should run, and run a lot of, we have Remorseful Cleric, 1 and a white for a 2/1 flyer. It says sacrifice Remorseful Cleric, exile all cards from target player's graveyard. So this is super great. To be able to get 2 effects out of this is very, very nice. To be able to keep all those graveyard decks running around, keep them in check. And then we have Selfless Spirit, 1 and a white for a 2/1 flyer. Sacrifice Selfless Spirit. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. So being able to get getting 2 uses out of Selfless Spirit is really, really awesome, because we have to commit very heavily to the board. Like, all of our things are, they're going to be things that people can see. They can sort of do the math to figure out what's going to happen. And so that people are going to want to mess with our board. And so with Selfless Spirit, protects us from 2 board wipes, from 2 destroy effects. It's just very, very resilient. Being able to recur it with something like Sun Titan and bring it back is super awesome. So it's definitely great protection, fits super well into the deck. And then for card draw, and we have Magus of the Wheel, 2 and a red for a 3/3. And you can pay 1 in a red and tap and sacrifice it, and each player discards their hand and draws 7 cards. So a very fair Wheel of Fortune with Hofri out allows us to get another token copy of it that we can then use on the next turn if we're able to play through our hand, and then wheel again. Or if we get absolute butts on the next 7 that we can draw, then we can play out what we can and then wheel again. A lot of the draw in here, being in Boros, is a lot of looting effects and discarding and redrawing, and so cool. He's a good boy. Can't afford another Wheel of Fortune, sadly. Otherwise, I would put 1. Honestly, I'd put 1 in every deck. I love that card so much. So those are some of our creatures that that want to go to the graveyard. Now let's look at some of our creatures with ETBs that we like. One of my favorites is Combustible Gear Hulk. I'm always trying to jam this card into decks. I'm like, does it have red? Can I fit a 6-mana artifact in here? It's 4 red for a 6/6 with first strike. When Combustible Gear Hulk enters the battlefield, the target opponent may have you draw 3 cards. If the player doesn't, you mill 3 cards and it deals damage equal to the total mana value of those cards. So someone in my casual play group that I play in all the time will just let me draw 3 cards. So if I'm playing with her, I always target her because she does not like taking damage from cards. I feel like there's always one in a play group who would just rather let you draw than take damage, which I think is silly, and I think objectively incorrect because, I mean, I guess it depends on the deck and how low your life total is, but yeah, you just letting your opponent draw 3 cards for nothing, basically. So I love this card. I'm always trying to play it. And a 6/6 with first strike is definitely a very solid body to try and get through. But I think is, very cool. Love it. I love this Gear Hulk cycle from Kaladesh. It's definitely one of my favorite cycles. And then with ETBs, something that I found that is really cool with this deck is the Evoke effect. So it's an alternate casting cost, and if you pay this casting cost instead of its regular mana value, then you sacrifice it when it enters the battlefield, but you still get the very cool effect. So the Evoke cost is usually less than the actual mana value of the card because it's expecting you to cast it, but in this deck it's a huge upside because with Hofri out, we get to have a token copy of it when it immediately dies, so we get to keep the body and we get the effect. Which is neat. Which the body that we keep, since it'll be a token copy, will be buffed up and have trample and haste. Which is sweet. So first of them is a relatively new one. It's called Ingot Chewer. 4 and a red for a 3/3 elemental. When Ingot Chewer enters the battlefield, destroy target artifact, and its evoke cost is 1 red. So you pay 1 red. You get a 3/3, you destroy an artifact, and you destroy 2 artifacts, and you get a 3/3 that, or now you get a 4/4 with trample and haste. Like, that's sweet. And a new one is Solitude, 3 white for a 3/2 with flash and lifelink. When Solitude enters the battlefield, exile up to one other target creature. The creature's controller gains life equal to its power, and its evoke cost is exile a white card from your hand. So this card, I mean, it's a free Swords to Plowshares that's going to leave behind a 4/3 life-linking, trampling, flashy boy with haste. Hell yeah! This is definitely just one of the best cards that I've been able to put in here from Modern Horizons 2, and was super stoked to be able to buy a full copy from Cameron from the Lab Maniacs, because, oh man, whew, that's good value. I mean, like, honestly, even if I don't evoke it, use its evoke cost, 5 mana to be able to Swords to Plowshare something, at instant speed that's fine. It's a fine rate. And then we have our last evoke creature, Soul of Migration, 5 white for a 2/4 flyer. And when Soul of Migration enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 white bird creature tokens of flying, and its evoke cost is 3 and a white. So these evoke cards, we are almost always trying to pay these evoke costs, but each of these effects are still fine enough where if you're really, really in a pinch, I'd still play it. For its regular cost. And then cards that give us bodies when they enter the battlefield, sort of the opposite of our pinatas. One of them is Geist Honored Monk, 3 white for a star. A vigilance, it has vigilance, and when Geist Honored Monk's power, I don't know why it's so hard to say. Power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures you control, and when it enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying. So it gives us relevant creature types when it enters because of our commander, and this deck is looking to pump out tokens. So it gets to be a pretty pretty big body. And then if we get to sack it and get a token copy of it to get one with trample and vigilance and haste and make more spirits is pretty sweet. And another one along a similar vein is Reverent Hoplite, 4 and a white for a 1/2 human soldier. When it enters the battlefield, create a number of 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens equal to your devotion to white. So we're in a Boros deck, of course, but our breakdown, I think 59% of all pips in this deck are white. So we can definitely reasonably expect to make 3 or 4 when it enters the battlefield. And then when we get to sack it and make a token copy of it, that's just going to give us even more, which is sweet. And then with some ramp, with our white ramp spells, we have Knight of the White Orchid, white for a 2/2 human knight with first strike, and when it enters the battlefield, if an opponent controls more lands than you, you may search your library for planes and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. It's really nice being able to sack it, get another land, get that extra value out of it is cool. And then along those lines, we have Core Cartographer, 3 and a white for a 2/2, Core Scout. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a planes card, put it onto the battlefield tap, then shuffle your library. So, yeah, super nice to be able to sack, get token copies of, have those come in, be able to ramp us out, so that we can make sure that we have, enough mana to pump out our commander or to play some of our bigger things like Triplicate Titan. Yeah, very cool stuff. So those are like our big ETB creatures who give us some pretty good value. And then now with sort of like one of our creatures, artifacts, and enchantments that are a payoff for sort of cycling through these creatures of sending them to the graveyard, to exile, and then back again, and getting token copies, we have these 7. So Annex, Hardened in the Forge, is 1 red for a star 3 demigod from Theros Beyond Death. Annex's power is equal to your devotion to red. Don't really care. What we really care about Annex is whenever Annex or another non-token creature you control dies, create a 1/1 red satyr creature token with this creature can't block, and if the creature had power 4 or greater, you can make 2 of those instead. So it's a nice way that to have bodies that get left behind when we have our creatures die, so that we can take those token creatures that Annex creates, and then we can sacrifice them to some of our sacrifice outlets and that sort of stuff, and to give us little attackers. And then we have Field of Souls, 2 white for an enchantment. Whenever another non-token creature is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, put a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying onto the battlefield. It's just great passive value. We care about spirits. Just, yeah, super nice. Perfect. This is another card that I'm always like, can I put this in a deck? And then Relic Vial, which I think is honestly the best card in this deck. It is an artifact for 3 mana. Its activated ability is 2 and tap, sacrifice a creature, draw a card. And as long as you control a cleric, which our commander is, Relic Vial has, whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So it's kind of funny. So this is kind of funny because I didn't want to play black because of the abundance of these kind of effects that black offers. So I was very excited to find one of them like this effect in one card of Relic Vial, which very much synergizes with our commander, because our commander is notably a cleric, and then there are some other clerics in this deck too. So even if we've been priced out of Hofri, we can still take advantage of that ability. Yeah, so good. And then, so for creatures entering the battlefield, because, we're making token copies, we're cracking those pinatas, or those creatures that are entering the battlefield are bringing more creatures with them, we have cards like Impact Tremor, an enchantment for 1 and a red. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, Impact Tremor does 1 damage to each opponent. And Perforus, God of the Forge, 3 and a red for a 6/5 legendary enchantment creature god, who is indestructible, and as long as your devotion to red is less than 5, then Perforos is not a creature. And whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Perforos deals 2 damage to each opponent, and then he has fire breathing, or can give creatures fire breathing, basically. 2 and a red. Creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. So very nice to be able to, shock each opponent whenever we have one of our little tokens come in. And then, since all of our spirits have trample and haste, the activated ability to pump our creatures up, it's actually really relevant. It's a really nice mana sink, so to be able to push more damage through by pumping them all up. And then we have some cards that care about when our cards leave the graveyard. And one of them is Quintorius Field Historian, an Elephant Cleric for 3 red-white, a 2/4. Who says spirits you control get +1/+0. And whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. So nice, gets to make a pretty relevant, gets to make us a pretty, relevant creature type for us with a pretty substantial body, and brings a bit of an anthem with them too. And since we are, since Hofri cares that they are dying and then going to the graveyard, and that's happening like individual triggers, we're going to be able to, even if there is a massive board wipe, we're going to get like 1, 3, 2 for each of those creatures. That's going to go... Does that actually happen? Oh, yeah. Yeah. So be able to get us little spirit for each of those creatures that's going to die and then go to exile. Notably wouldn't happen if we got like Bajuka Bogged. We would only get one creature then. And then with that, very similar, is Desecrated Tomb for an artifact for 3 generic. Whenever one or more creature cards leave your graveyard, create a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying. So nice, get little evasive flyers. Yeah, I love that card. I've been looking for a deck to put this card in, so I'm glad it finally has a home. So those are basically some of our payoffs, and then, of course, with this deck, we need to be able to kill our creatures if they can't kill themselves. And so some of our sacrifice outlets that we have here, one of them is Altar of Dementia. 2 generic mana for an artifact that has sacrifice a creature. Target player puts a number of cards equal to the sacrifice creature's power from the top of their library into their graveyard. And so yeah, just mill a nice way. Mill people out, mill yourself. Just a useful artifact. And then we have a sorcery, Descent of the Dragons for 4 red. Destroy any number of target creatures. For each creature destroyed this way, its controller puts a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying onto the battlefield. So it's a nice way for like our creatures who, when they ETB or they die, when they give us like little 1/1 human soldiers, any tokens that don't have evasion, it's a nice way to automatically sort of upgrade those bodies that they leave behind or bring into play by making them 4/4 flying dragons. And be able to have a way to kill ourselves so that we can get a token copy of them with Hofri out and get a dragon. And another cool one is Indomitable Creativity for X red. A sorcery, destroy X target artifacts and or creatures. For each permanent destroyed this way, its controller reveals cards to the top of their library until an artifact or creature card is revealed and exiles that card. Those players put the exile cards onto the battlefield and shuffle our library. So it's a nice way. So for all of our tokens that we have come out, for the non-token creatures that we want to die, we can destroy them, and then we'll reveal until we get to an artifact or a creature for each of them destroyed that way, and we'll put this onto the battlefield. So it's kind of like a Chaos Warp, but for X. And so we can do this for our opponent's stuff too, so it gives us a nice removal, and hope that we don't hit something more drastic and much worse for us for destroying their stuff. And then, so let's see. So those are, our sack outlets, our creatures, and then of course we need to be able to recur our creatures for when they leave exile and go back to your graveyard. We want to be able to get them back out of our graveyard and into play or into our hands so that we can sort of keep this cycle going. And some of them that we are running is Late to Dinner, 3 and a white for a sorcery, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, create a food token. This is a common that I am putting like in every deck with white pretty much, just because it's a little bit more expensive than black recursion effects are, but it doesn't care about the CMC, and it just goes straight from the graveyard to the battlefield, so I will happily pay 4 mana for that effect. And on top of it, you get a food. And the flavor of it is so good. Like, it's so cute. The elephant's dead, but he didn't want to miss dinner. It's so sweet. I love this card. I love it a lot. I love all of the comments that Wizards has been printing lately that have just been really solid cards. Their comments are not over the top, but they just provide such great utility, and I am here for it. Another cool recursion piece is Shepherd of the Cosmos, 4 white for an Angel Warrior, a 3/3 flyer. And when Shepherd of the Cosmos enters the battlefield, return target permanent card with CMC 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And then it has Foretell for 3 and a white. So it's really nice that it sucks that it's 2 or less, but the fact that it is a permanent card is super nice. We can recur lands, artifacts that we've sacked, stuff, or have been destroyed, to be able to, like, return back a Soul Guide Lantern if we sacked it for a card, and then now we're like, oh shit, and then we need to exile, graveyards. Super, super cool card. I love the art on it. It's very pretty. And then we have, as I alluded to earlier, Sun Titan, 4 white for a 6/6 with Vigilance. When Sun Titan enters the battlefield or attacks, you may return permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So, classic white card. Super good. Sun Titan has obviously earned a home in this deck, because the vast majority, I believe, of all of our things that we want to die and bring back are going to be 3 or less. And yeah, so that is pretty much the Hofri deck. It is a blast to play. I've finally gotten a win with it, and so I try to play this deck whenever I can. And it's a really neat deck. The list that I have for it is mainly built with stuff that I just had lying around. So this list actually comes in at about $225, which is honestly not too bad for a commander deck, with definitely some great staples and some really cool effects. And if you're like me looking for an Aristocrats deck that wasn't just a build itself or Zov deck, then I would definitely suggest you try this out. I've definitely come across some weird some weird interactions and some cool things, and I'm definitely proud of it. And yeah, so let me know what you think. What are some creatures that you would like to sack and recur? What free sack outlets would you want to put into this deck? A card that is on my mind to pick up for this deck is a Anointed Procession. It's on the wish list. That is an auto-clued in this deck to get, more free fun value. But yeah, I didn't have an extra one lying around, and I was like, well, next time I put in a big card order, we'll pick one up for this deck. But yeah, let me know what you all think, and I will catch you cats around.